A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 97th edition of the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. A little over a year ago, when the pandemic had first started, schools had shut down, and most of our learning was moving online. We at Notebook felt that we could help the teaching community by creating this series of webinars called Together for Education. The basic idea was that educators who would log in here would get a more hands-on experience of these virtual meeting platforms and can perhaps use them better for their own teaching. Little did we know that this would go on for me to today invite you to this 97th episode. Over a year, 97 episodes later, the pandemic situation has not really improved. In fact, in some places of the country, it has gotten far worse. I hope you and your loved ones are taking care and staying safe and maintaining every single precaution you can to stay safe from this pandemic. We at Notebook wish you and all your near and dear ones the best of health in these difficult times. Today, we talk about a topic that is very closely related to the last 1 year in India's history, teaching resilience. We as a country have shown fantastic resilience, fighting odds of beating this virus with the size of population that we have was something that every country in the world was sure we could not do. Today, I understand that there are roadblocks. I understand that there are speed breakers on the way. But we as a country are resolutely still fighting against this virus, and I'm sure we will soon come out of this mess. Today, we talk about teaching resilience in our schools. To speak about the topic, our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Barrett. Mr. Barrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Barrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Barrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He's also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. And we at Notebook are privileged to have him as a senior advisor. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Subayu, for that introduction. Yes, I love the image of the spiny, tough cactus on the notebook page. It speaks of resilience and about being a survivor. Cacti are shrubs of very, very difficult climates, and they somehow come through their hardships. Good evening, everyone, and good evening to Achin and Meghna and Abhishek, Subayu, and all the notebook gang in Calcutta, our esteemed panelists, and all those guests who've tuned in today. I think that resilience is about being flexible and strong in the face of stress. And it is what we need in order to approach all life's challenges and rise above adversity and learn from the experiences and then move on with vitality and passion. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience is defined as the process of adapting well in the face of trauma, tragedy, threats, and stress. I mean, the best way I would explain it to a child would be to take that doll which has a rounded base and which stands up every time you push it down. So each time you push the doll down, it has the center of gravity brings it up again. And I think that would be the symbol of resilience for me. It's not the number of times it falls down. It's the number of times that you dusted yourself and you stood up after a fall. That is resilience. Or the little fir tree that withstands the weight of the snow and it bends and knocks the snow off, while the stout oak would break under the weight of the snow because it is rigid and inflexible. I recently watched a small video on Charles Schulz, the creator of the comic character Peanuts. And his life was very sad. He was no good student in school, zero in academics. He didn't play sports. He was extremely bullied. He wasn't good at anything. He was absolutely a failure. And he talks about himself. And he finally, the only thing he could do was to sketch. And after repeated failures as an artist, uh, he took to drawing cartoons, and he created his character called Peanuts, which again is a loser, a man who, a sad person who doesn't do well, and yet so many lessons are learned from the cartoons of Charles Schulz. Um, Resilience is what, of course, the American people showed at 9/11, and as Shabayu mentioned a little earlier, it's what all our medical practitioners are showing today. Um, we need to understand that when things don't go our way, the way we plan them to go, that there is great learning that can accrue during this time of stress. It can put us forward in many ways that where we have never imagined. So children's books are full of stories of resilience. But for me, the best story that I have recently heard about is the White Helmets of Syria. This group of about 300 volunteers who rush into war-torn Rafah and other towns there where the government troops are bombing, and they every day are picking out bodies from the rubble, and regardless of how much food they've had or water they had, they are at it day in and day out. These brave warriors risk their lives to save others. I think that again is resilience. You can see what's happening in that country, and yet these people go on regardless. Resilience is a value that can be developed. It can be done by allowing children to face frustration, to find inner strength, to cope with frustrating events or people. Helping and rescuing a child, rushing in to save him, is actually, it might look like love, but it is not, because eventually it's not going to help the child be resilient. These days, I find children are extremely entitled. They feel that they should get whatever they want. Wherever their eyes fall, they think they should get it, whether it's house captain or prefect, or whether this is this college in the US or that college in Germany. Now, what happens is nothing should come in their way. And, and I think parents are partly to blame for this, because they create they create this atmosphere of, yes, I believe I can get whatever I want. And when things don't go their way, these children are the first to crack up. And yes, crack up they will, because they have not been taught how to take hardships. Now, I think it is teaching a child to understand that we are not in control of anything. I would say anything. Things happen that are out of our control. We could have all the resources that we want, but sometimes we have to face disappointment. It's a part of life. This is resilience. Children need to learn that life is not easy. Life is not easy. Who promised that life would be easy? Again, this is something else that comes from parents. The moment there's discomfort or pain, the parent rushes in to appease or to assuage this system. If it's too hot, on goes the AC. If it's too cold, on goes the heater. They don't let anyone or any child grow. And I think as a teacher, we need to teach children to wait, and to practice what Stephen Covey calls the law of delayed gratification. I think we need to make them wait for what they want and to work for what they want. Again, the great marshmallow experiment of the Stanford University, which was done in 1972, it was upgraded in 2020 again, which again talks about how a group of children were given a marshmallow, and by this professor, and were asked not to touch it for 15 minutes as he left the room. And if they could withstand the temptation of eating that marshmallow, they would get 2 when he came back. And these children were followed for the next 20 years, I think, and they found that the children who could resist touching the first marshmallow did much better in SAT scores, did much better in life. They even had better BMI indexes. You can see that they were geared to be more successful. And the children who could not withstand their temptation to go for the marshmallow didn't do that well in life. Now, I think resilient people have certain characteristics. When they see difficulties in their way, They also see opportunities and challenge. They are very committed. Every time they start something and they fall, they get up and do it again. They recognize, as I said, the limits of their control. They are more accepting of what comes their way. They engage in good relationships and depend also on the support of other people. They have personal and collective goals very well laid out. Not only their own goals, but the goals of the organization, the community, the school, the family. They also practice ways of reducing their stress. All successful, resilient people have their own stress reduction techniques. They also build on past experiences, and they think about what happened last time. They are very patient. They are high in tolerance, and they adapt to change. And naturally, they are very optimistic, and they may have a deep faith in something or the other. Teachers can help children become resilient by making them have realistic goals and plans. They should be able to handle their feelings and impulses in a healthy manner. They must have good communication skills. They must have more confidence in the skills that they have. And they have to learn how to problem solve. These are 4 things that teachers can help with children. Also, I was reading about the 4-factor approach that was created by a scientist called Deborah Serrani. She said, let's take an accident. A person has a car accident. The first thing is that you've got to state the facts to yourself. Let's not blame others. I didn't drive properly. I had a crash. You cannot manipulate the facts. You failed the exam. Well, you should know why you failed the exam. The second is that you should not place the blame on anyone. You place it where it belongs. In this case, you had the accident. The accident was your fault. So you must place the blame where it belongs. Thirdly, you have to reframe the whole thing, which really means trying to find the silver lining in the clouds. This could have been worse. I could have died. So, and the last is give it time to heal. I think all setbacks, all tragedies need time to heal. I want to end by 2 short stories which are related to my life, which I think called upon my resilience and everything that I learned from my teachers. One was in 1980, where I had a very serious accident and I spent about 6 to 9 months in hospital. Many operations later, when I emerged, I used to be an athlete. I ran marathons and I ran for Delhi at the Nationals. I ran for North London. I was waiting for a call-up for the national squad. And it all came crashing down in the space of 5 minutes. I was crushed on a road in Delhi. And my whole life changed. And I had to take it from there. And the other one was in 2002, when I lost my wife to cancer. We picked the cancer up quite late. Again, all the plans, all the well-laid, futuristic plans that we had all came to naught. I became a single parent, and I took life as it came. In 2003, my whole life was derailed, but I had to put it on another set of rails. So what did I learn about this? What helped me was my support system, my friends, my deep faith in my religion. I didn't blame others. I accepted that things happen this way, that are out of our control, and that life is tough. I pursued my hobbies. I looked at the future, and I looked at a bright future. I took time off to travel and be on my own. I sought out some solitude. I did a lot of positive self-talk. I learned more about myself. I did a lot of writing down of my future plans and where I would be heading. I was very curious about learning about where my life would lead now. And therefore, these are the things that I have learned of myself and I have practiced on my students to help them be more resilient. I hope I have made this clear enough to our listeners. Thank you very much for being such a patient audience. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that sharing of your thoughts. Week after week, we have benefited from your erudition at the beginning of every session. But today just went to another level with you sharing your personal tales of resilience. And for that, I thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session on a topic which is very appropriate in this current hour of crisis. When as a society, as a nation, and as members of the planet, we are facing the pandemic and its various waves for more than a year now. At the core, resilience is a belief that while we can't control everything in our life, there are many aspects we can control, including, most importantly, our attitude. Resilience works like a muscle we can build through effort and repetition. And we want to keep our muscles strong and flexible so that we can think of many ways to solve a problem. But here, when we are discussing about teaching school children resilience, how can we actually do that? If we micromanage them every single day, to truly prepare for adult life, we need to make sure that our young people build character and resilience. For instance, in 10 years' time from now, exam results will be a distant memory. Character and resilience stay with us for life and are far more crucial for social mobility. And I'm sure all of us will agree with this. The more successful we are in terms of raising an independent child, the more obsolete we become. It really captures the bittersweet paradox of parenting. The more successful, we are in making him or her more independent, naturally over a course of time, we lose our relevance. At times, as parents, as teachers, it's always a temptation to stand behind them and to catch them when they fall out of a tree or to step in. When we hear as a parent, we hear him or her being bullied by friends. It also makes us feel far more useful. But more often than not, the lessons he or she will learn from seeing these things by facing them independently. The effect will be far more long lasting. So when we discuss about resilience, it's not about just toughening up. That's one aspect. So I was going through a recent report on resilience macro trend from a very prominent customer insight agency. And very aptly put, it's about relearning, it's about rebooting, it's about recalibrating brands, businesses, corporations, and more importantly, ourselves. Resilience is crucial when it comes to the welfare of our children. A very famous psychologist, Jonathan Haidt, I was going through some of his writings. He has written a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. In that, there are two terms that he has mentioned, and very appropriate terms. First, the culture of safetyism, and second, helicopter parenting. And he has argued that it has helped this culture of being overprotective, of helicopter parenting, according to him, has actually helped raise an entire generation of children who are obsessed with aspects like microaggression, unable to deal with harsh realities of life for themselves. And he has termed it as snowflake hypothesis. And some very interesting aspects. I was reading about some Silicon Valley parents, in fact, who have encouraged, who have actually gone on record to say that we have encouraged our children at times to deliberately get a lower grade. A child who is always used to getting an A, we want him or her at least once in their life, maybe to get an F, so that they know what failure feels like. And there are various studies, very interesting studies all over the globe, which actually back up this insight, back up this hypothesis. So one research paper which was published in the Journal of Developmental Psychology, it has actually found out that this research was conducted by looking at 2-year-olds. A group of 2-year-olds were taken, and there was a comparison, and there are two distinct cases. First case, where mothers were intervening. When a child was not being able to figure out something on his or her own, the mother used to interfere, used to help. And second, where the children were left to figure stuff out by themselves. And the study actually concluded that children where mothers actually helped, they ended up being less emotionally resilient. The problem here is that if you don't learn skills to self-regulate, how can they actually self-regulate when they leave home? A professor in the University of Warwick even goes as far, Professor Dieter Rupp goes as far as to mention that being overprotective, according to the professor, is a form of abusiveness, taking opportunity away from children. So the professor goes on to say that children need to be given opportunity to grow up on their own, to face the world, to face adversity. And if we are taking that opportunity away from them, we are doing them a great disservice. Now, as far as character, whether character is the crucial factor in social mobility, well, we all know that it's true that that there are exceptional individuals who succeed unimaginably in unimaginably difficult circumstances, and we have seen that. Very recently, I was watching an interview, I remember a few years back, of Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee. And he went on record to say that I grew up playing with slum kids at Kolkata. And he says, he also elaborated how his younger years shaped a lot of his belief and eventually led him into his detailed research on poverty. But we have been discussing about resilience. What actually is resilience? To me, it's the ability to recover from adversity. So another way of thinking is it's about being buoyant, returning to original after being bent, stretched, or compressed, being elastic enough. In terms of psychology, where resilience means, what resilience means is adapting to difficult situations like what we are right now facing, like COVID-19, different kind of adversity, and being able to bounce back. That's the most important thing. This does not necessarily mean ignoring them, but recognizing that change is difficult, and learning to be flexible, to tolerate these situations, For example, if we look at the whole thing from a family's context, in terms of families, again, a family's ability to respond to stress and challenge in a positive and adaptive manner, which is often done by demonstrating a competence and B, confidence among the family members. With children involved, this is promoting those same characteristics for them. Resilience doesn't mean that we don't experience stress difficulties. Instead, it means that we learn to manage them in spite of facing adversities. It's difficult to imagine going through life without facing adversity. It's theoretical. Practically, it's not possible. You would all agree here. But it's important, I think learning how to manage them, it's a critical piece of becoming a fully developed human being, which is what we work on with our children. I think a part of being resilient is also about knowing our A, own strengths, and B, weaknesses. So it's particularly important right now not to be hard on ourselves. Being flexible remains the key here. In this current situation, we are all learning as we go. That means that some of our goals and expectations will naturally change, and that's okay. I think other thing is this a quality that we can learn? Can we be more and more resilient with each passing day? Of course, I believe so. I believe it's something that we can actually learn and teach our children, and we can even improve. Everyone can learn the behavior, the thought, and actions that go along with being resilient. It's not something that is a trait of personality or characteristic that we are only born with. So it's something that we can very well learn and adapt. And also, I believe it's renewable. It's very much possible to fill our own bucket with more resilience. We can also help our children to build their own bucket of resilience through different tools. And it doesn't mean giving them out of our own bucket. They can actually build it, and they'll need it along the way. Another very important aspect is for parents and teachers to be leaders for their children. We all would agree that we really look up to our leaders, right? In communities, in organizations, to provide guidance, and especially during hours of crisis. During hour of crisis, we actually look up to them. And as far as children are concerned, parents and teachers are those leaders for young children. And we'd all agree that emotions are contagious. Children will pick up emotions. So as a leader for them, it is important that we acknowledge difficulties. We acknowledge the fact that yes, we are experiencing difficulties, and yes, we are vulnerable. But we should also practice and model confidence in approaching and tackling these difficulties. It's okay to admit that we may not know what to do in a given circumstance and to face the discomfort. But it's also equally important to move forward and approach things with a problem-solving mindset. And being a leader during times of stress, aspects like being calm, providing hope are very important for being a leader, especially during these critical times. And a part of this is also about being self-aware, being aware about our own emotional and physical reaction to a situation, what's happening in the outside world, taking time to pause and reflect on things before we react, which I think is very, very important. Being able to plan ahead a little bit about how we are going to manage these situations, any uncertainty. Say in terms of COVID-19, when we look through psychology at resilience and the study of resilience in other, say for example, other disasters like natural disasters and situations that have happened earlier, we would all agree that this one is very different. What we are right now, what we are going through is very different. And there are a number of reasons why this is different. First of all, the uncertainty with which this has been continuing for a very long period of time. Now it's more than a year. Second, it's not tangible. It's something that we can't see or touch. And thus at times, if you look at things from a child's perspective, for children, it's far more confusing. It's far more confusing, especially for younger children. So what can we actually control and provide for our children during this time? I think first, very, very important is our attention. Children crave for attention, for parents' attention, especially during this time, during hours of crisis. So attention be in the form of looking at them, talking to them, interacting with them. Think about, where our energy is going in terms of attention. We can also use our attention to highlight and point out the great things that our children are doing, trying to do at home. Also, when it comes to fostering resilience in children, I think there are 4 very important aspects, very, very important. First, connection. Second, wellness. Third, meaning. And fourth, healthy thinking. So when I say connection, I mean building connection. Say, for example, to build resiliency, it's important that we want to build connections, prioritize relationships. We know when we study characteristics of resilient children, they feel special and appreciated. They feel comfortable with others, being able to develop effective communication skills, to ask others for what they need, to ask for help, to reach out. Thus, it's important to promote communication. We need to teach them how to communicate effectively with others. And also, I think very, very important, we can strategically use our own attention to provide them with ways to communicate. For example, we want to listen. We want to show them that, yes, we are listening. We want to acknowledge their feelings in situations that they are expecting right now. We want to help them to label their feelings, to acknowledge for things that they are missing out. Yes, for more than a year, they may not have interacted with their classmates or got the opportunity for outdoor sports. We need to acknowledge that, yes, you are missing this, but you are not alone. We are all together in this journey. At the same time, we want to communicate and help them to notice the things that they have to look forward to in future. Second, I think is practice wellness and self-care. Again, very, very important. For example, during this time, we often see excessive information flow. Very often in social media, a WhatsApp forward going viral, and without verifying the sanctity of the same, which is practically not possible also to verify. Very often this creates panic. So it's important to stick to a few reliable sources and trying to stick planned times to actually tune in and learn what's happening. Especially for young children, if they are around, if they are listening, if they're overhearing, there may be certain contents of the news which we may not want them to hear. They may get disturbed. Thus, limit watching or listening to content, especially if children are around. I think very, very important. For older children, for teenagers, of course, we all agree that they have the opportunity to tune in on their own. So maybe talking to them about certain sources of information which we feel are more reliable, more trustworthy. Resilient children are able to recognize, label, and manage their own emotion. Third, I think, is creating meaning, which is another very, very important thing. In order to build resilience, it's important to find purpose and to move towards goal. This helps us to create meaning. Resilient children have learned how to set realistic goals and expectations for themselves. Now, for example, right now, this is changing. Thus, goals also need to be repurposed. What's realistic and what we can actually accomplish right now has changed during last 1.5 years. As adults, we can actually help children to repurpose their goal. We can help them to recognize that things might change. And for example, their problem that they have, we may actually help them to break down this problem into more smaller and manageable pieces and work with them closely towards it. So they will have their own goals. Say goals about participating in an outdoor sport, in school sports, getting a medal. They might have practiced the whole year. Goals about achieving a certain grade in academics. So we need to work with them, make them understand. I think last aspect, thinking healthily, very, very important. Resilient children have a sense of self-discovery. They recognize their own strengths and weaknesses. So sitting with them, asking them questions that how they've actually grown during this time. And from this entire experience, what is their learning? Taking a moment to reflect on these questions, of course, gives them a great sense of strength. A part of self-discovery always is trying to do it despite your fears. You can gain comfort and confidence by trying. Thus, using our own strategic attention, we can point things out to children, which is, I think, very important. Also, watching for black and white or more inflexible thinking, and model being more flexible. Think about how we can get through this or what will come next. Watch for phrases that include things like always and never, or for example, I can't. So this is like black and white thinking. Either it's always or it's never. It's very important to inculcate a culture of flexibility and keep an eye for any other inaccuracy or unhelpful thoughts that might come up. Connecting thoughts, feelings, and action is a really helpful way to help children connect the dots and make it true and develop more healthy ways looking at a situation. As a leader and a parent, it's okay to express optimism. It's okay to acknowledge the difficulty and say, we will find our way through this. It's important to maintain a hopeful outlook and visualize what you want in future. It's easier to focus on the fears you may have, but it's critical to try to be optimistic right now. So we need to remember that resiliency is facing adversity, not avoiding it, working through it and moving forward. We can teach and model this to our children. Use our attention more strategically, pointing out the times that they're facing adversity and help them work through it independently. So these are a few things that I wanted to highlight. We have a great stellar panel today, and I really look forward to the deliberation on this very contemporary topic. Over to you, Shubhai. I thank all of you for giving me patient hearing. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Achin mentioned, we do have a stellar panel lined up for you. Before we go on to the panel discussion, just a couple of minutes to tell you about Notebook. We at Notebook are an EdTech organization. We make small videos pertaining to the school curriculum. About 10,000 videos ranging right from classes 1 through to class 12 cover each and every topic of each and every subject of the NCERT curriculum. Now, these videos come in handy in two different ways. First, when you as a teacher are taking your class, whether it's online or offline, you can share these videos either before a class or even during your class with your students. These videos offer the students a visual way of connecting with the topics better. The second use that these videos find is for the students themselves. They have access to the same videos on their personal devices at home. Be it a laptop or any smartphone, they can access these videos to revise those topics and, more importantly, get reminded of what you had taught in class that very day. What I'm going to do now is play you a very short snippet of one of those notebook videos. Given that the topic that we are discussing today is resilience, this video harks back to the time when the Indians first turned around and told the British occupiers that no, we would not take it lying down, that we choose to be resilient against their foes.
All these reasons led to the outburst of a full-scale rebellion in the northern parts of the country in 1857. It became the single largest armed resistance movement in the world against a colonial power in the 19th century. The British had become the common enemy of the people, and large-scale popular resistance came to the fore as a result of the active participation of people. The first known attack was from a young soldier named Mangal Pandey on 29th March 1857 when he attacked his officers in Barakpur. After this event, the action moved to Meerut, where the sepoys attacked and killed the British officers and marched straight towards Delhi with the aim to end the rule of the Firangis and make the old Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar the supreme head of the rebellion. Once the rebels convinced Bahadur Shah to lead them, a series of letters were sent to all the rulers and chiefs of the land, inviting them to join the revolt and overthrow the rule of the British. A number of regiments, consisting of Indian sepoys, came over to the side of the rebels, and the northern parts of the country saw an outburst of mutinies. Rulers, zamindars, peasants, participation came from all levels. In the initial period, the British were grossly outnumbered and met with many defeats at the hands of the rebels. Awadh witnessed a full-blown rebellion on 6th August as a result of the growing confidence of the people and the belief that the days of company rule were actually numbered. The rebellion witnessed the emergence of many brave heroes such as Nana Sahib in Kanpur, Tantia Top and Rani Lakshmibai in Jhansi, Kunwar Singh in Bihar, Bakht Khan in Delhi, Rani Avantibai Lodhi of Ramgarh, all of whom fought valiantly against the foreign enemy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was just a very short snippet of one of those notebook videos. You would find, as I said, 10,000 such videos catering to the entire NCERT curriculum if you move on to our website www.notebook.school. Well, with that out of the way, it is now time to move on to the discussion that we have at hand. We have a stellar panel lined up for you, and it is my privilege to introduce them to you. We have with us Dr. Kritika Kaushal, who is the principal of the Millennium School in Mohali. Being an educationist, she believes that education awakens the power and beauty that lie within us. To her, education does not only mean academic excellence, it rather is a harmonious and synchronized combination of hand, skills like various arts, head, intellectual power, and heart, value system. Regarding her academic background, after completing her graduation in the field of biotechnology from Punjab University, Chandigarh, she got enrolled for Masters in Biotechnology. A deep interest in teaching took her to complete her degree of Bachelor's in Education, and she started her journey with St. Luke Senior Secondary School in Solan, Himachal Pradesh. To further explore the world, she got herself enrolled and completed her doctorate in the field of biotechnology. Still, the passion and interest remained the same, and so she decided to move ahead with teaching as a profession. And after a decade of teaching experience, she feels that she is on the right track and will always remain committed and dedicated towards this passion. As an educationist, she feels it is important for every child to enjoy a sense of achievement, that every child should be encouraged to perform to the fullest ability, and due importance should be given to learning in areas beyond academics. She believes that a child will be successful in life if we accept him or her as they are and inspire them to become what they want to become. Ma'am, thank you so much for making the time and being here today. It's a privilege to host you. We also have with us, you're welcome, ma'am. We also have with us Mrs. Geeta Arora, who is the principal of the LDC Public School in Prayagraj. She holds an MA, a B.Ed, a PGT in economics. She considers counseling for students and teachers part of her duties. She is a poet and author in All India Kshitij Group, and she secured third position in All India Poetry Competition from Kshitij Group 2020-2021. She has been a PGT economics for 8 years. She took CA foundation classes for 4 years and has been a principal since 2017. She spent 1 year in Mother Teresa Public School, and since the year 2018, she has been with the LDC Public School. She is an accomplished educationist and an economist, and has been a part of the education industry for more than a decade now. Be it education, empathy, leadership, staff development, strategic planning, e-learning, research, industrial design and development, she lays a firm hand over them all, working hard and striving towards making education a better space for countryside areas and helping in building a community of educated and broad-minded individuals from the rural areas has been one of her major achievements thus far. Being a poetess and a writer, on the personal front, she has not only incorporated this unique skill set of hers on her career path, but also fetched laurels to be known as one of the renowned writers of Kshitij, Where Dreams Meet Reality, by winning the Pan India Poetry Hunt. It was with her vision and strategic goal development skills that she is here today. As one of the motivators, emphasizing on the importance of e learning during COVID times and what learning should never stop, come what may. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. It's an absolute honor to have you on this platform. We also have with us Mrs. Veena Anil, who is the principal of the Dia Academy of Learning in Bangalore. An inspirational leader with 19 years of experience in the field of education, she has worked with CBSE, ICSE, and state board schools. Her main focus as an educator is to bring quality education to students for holistic development. In her career, she has been associated with various dynamic, progressive institutions where she could utilize her skills and experiences, which not only provide a challenging career alternative, but also an opportunity to contribute to the institutions as well as towards the development of society. She holds a master in biotechnology, also a master's in psychology, a bachelor's degree in education, diploma in counseling and guidance, and a Cambridge International Diploma for Teachers and Trainers. She believes that a teacher is a lifelong learner and has completed various certifications from many reputed universities. She has conducted many workshops for teachers to share her knowledge and experience with the upcoming teachers and trainers. She is also one of the resource persons from CBSE for the teachers training at CBSE schools. She has been awarded the prestigious EduStar Award for her contributions in the field of education. She is honored by All India Citizens Group with Ideal Principal Award. She has been selected as the best district principal by the Science Olympic Foundation Group. She has served as a jury member on a government project, Dream on India, which is addressed to the Honorable President of India. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. Absolutely thrilled to have all three of you on this platform. I will stop my share now, switch on the camera so that we can all see each other and start this discussion. First of all, a very good evening and thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I have a set of questions that I will pose to each one of you and we'll go around the table. But we keep this discussion as free flowing as possible. So please feel free to jump in whenever you want. Dr. Kaushal, if I may come to you first. Ma'am, in your school, how do you teach resilience? It's not one of the chapters I know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank Notebook for providing this platform, I must say, because the topic which we have taken up for today's discussion itself is one of the topics I would say is close to my heart. And as one of the speakers in the beginning also mentioned, the highlight was the cactus plant, that cacti. And I think that itself is sufficient to explain that what it is all about. Very well said by you that yes, it's not in any of the chapters in any of the subject, right? We cannot really teach our children that what we mean by resilience. It is only when they are going to experience it and they are going to, obviously they are going to bounce back, when they are going to learn how to bend and not to break. That is something when we say that yes, now the kids are learning that power of resilience. And I think this is the most hardest time which we all are facing along with our children. Last year has been a most challenging learning year, I would say. And when I look back, I see how beautifully our children, they have adapted the situation. Now it was an overnight digital transformation, but see the children, the beautiful cope up what they have done. And again, the learning process was continued. There was no, I'll say that the learning process did not get hampered for even a single day. I think that's the power and the magic of resilience. We cannot just go and just train our, yes, we can definitely train our children, because it's about the mindset, the self-awareness, the positivity, the positive attributes what a child can have. And as most of the time I come up with the same statement, that when we talk about education, we need to understand that what exactly we want to educate, what exactly we want to teach our kids, what are learning goals. This is not about completing any coursework or syllabus of any particular subject. It's about training them for the real life challenges, inculcating those real life skills. And when we talk about real life skills, I think being resilient is one of those. Kids are actually coping up with this hard time where the entire world is COVID ridden, and they don't have space, they don't have place where they can go and actually share their mental state. Being adults, I think Sir mentioned beautifully in the beginning also that it is not that if we are saying that we are resilient, we do not face that stress and that emotional, I would say emotional, obviously that strength we have to keep with us, that ray of hope we need to have in our hearts to keep moving. I'm going to share, and all the panelists are going to agree with me, that every single day is a new challenge for us being an educators. I think we have evolved as more resilient than ever. Every single day we are closing down, shutting down every single thing, keeping it aside, and the driving force which is keeping us going is our kids, our children, our team. And above all, I think when we talk about teaching resilience to our kids, we need to have that collaboration with our parents as well. So I think giving our kids that kind of space and that kind of awareness that whatever they are doing, we are there to help them. There's no need to go for that disappointment. Failures are going to be there. Life is not going to be a cakewalk for them. There are going to be disappointments and failures, but the real beauty lies when you are going to learn how to accept it. The beauty will lie when you will actually learn that IQ is not that important, it's AQ, not intellectual quotient. It's about acceptance and adaptation quotient. And I think our kids are giving us the beautiful example, sitting inside the four walls of their houses, their homes, still how beautifully they are coping up, whatever. It's just they're connecting with us digitally, but they're ready to learn and they're ready to grasp. I think they are the biggest example of being resilient at this moment of our being adults. We still have people, we still have our support systems where we can go and talk about our stress and our emotional breakdowns. But just try and imagine the state of mind of a 5-year-old child or a 4-year-old child, right? So I think being teachers, being educators, it is our responsibility that we give them that space and we guide them, and we are always there for them. That is most important. And I think for that major role, I would say at this time where we cannot physically connect with our students, we need to have that strong collaboration with the parents. And I think together only it is possible for us that we bring that skill in our students, because it is again a skill, a life skill, which needs to be inculcated in our generation so that they can actually be prepared for the upcoming future, which is again very uncertain. It's not about that everything is decided that, okay, this kind of future you're going to have, everything is going to be served to you as a platter. So it is again, I think pandemic has given us an example to experience that and to teach our children that this is what we call about life. This is when we say that nature is teaching us, and we have to bounce back with more strength, with that positive energy, and with that ray of hope in our hearts. We need to be more hopeful. We need to be more aware. And yes, we can combat every single challenge which is coming to us in our lives. I think that kind of positive energy we need to have when we talk to our kids and when we enter during these online classes and we connect with our students. I think that's the best way what we can do right now.
Wonderful, ma'am. I completely agree with you that nature is teaching us a lesson. I just wish this was a little easier a lesson. We didn't need such a difficult one. Geeta ma'am, if I may come to you next with the same question. How do you teach your children resilience?
Sir, actually, our school is based in semi-rural area. So there were a lot of challenges when we started in April 2020. So how we have started and what was our journey? I think it's a lifetime journey that it seems that what we have done and achieved, we all are so proud of ourselves. We never imagined, because actually establishing in rural area and running school in rural area with just because of with online classes. So it was really a task for us. So what we have done, we have only 20 to 30% actually SS, mobile SS or smartphone SS was there at that time, I'm telling you. So in a span of an year, so how we have convinced students and especially our parents, how we have 2, 3, matlab when we have started, I think we were having a very handful numbers of parents and the students in our hand when we started all this. But somehow we have, because that at that time Corona was not that actually horrible, things were not there, so somehow we convinced them and we told them to just come to school. We'll teach you how to be technically adaptable. I think Corona has done a wonderful thing. I'm not in a literally sense. Ki it has actually make us 10 years. Actually, we are ahead now, technology wise. Otherwise, ye lesson, I don't think so. Hum kabhi seekh pate. Even so many teachers of mine were not on WhatsApp at that time. Forget about the students. Games and all they know, but how to study online, it was really a task. And parents, they only know how to just take calls or receive calls, and they were also, what is online studies, what you will teach over there. So it was a task. We were actually trying to tell them ki no, we don't have a choice. It's better to be busy productively and positively rather than sitting idly, because everybody was sitting idly at home, because that at that time it was a proper lockdown. लॉकडाउन क्या होता है लोग ये समझने की कोशिश कर रहे थे. People were trying to understand, we were trying to understand. Every day we were changing actually policies. We were trying to convince students. Okay, then we gradually we have started art classes online, then we have started yoga classes, then we have started online assembly. So gradually we were also learning, and we were making them all learn. So we were counseling our teachers. So teachers, I think there were 4 dimensions if we theoretically can speak. Ki 4 dimensions were there of being resilient. To teachers how to be emotionally, how to connect motivationally, how to be professionally. So how you are going to connect with your students. So gradually it was a journey, and how we make them understand. So what we are doing this year, because there was a break, if we can say that on October we becoming again offline. So we have a time again with the students. We were interacting with students of 9 to 12, because both actually board and pressure of boards, everything was there. There was so much of a chaos, but we have and handled it. And I say it's all students. They were actually so desperate to join school. Within a week, numbers were doubled and tripled. They started coming to school. So that is the power of education, and they understand ki what how our teachers are working hard. So they were also cooperating with us. So resilience is not something we can develop overnight. It needs a span of time. We all are taking time. We all were learning, and we still are learning, because now things are more uncertain. At that time हमारे पास ये था कि अच्छा चलो 2 महीने में ठीक हो जाएगा, 3 महीने में ठीक हो जाएगा. Now future is becoming somewhere darker, but technology has given us the hope कि how we are going to be connected each and every time. Now online assembly my students are doing, just see the transformation. Now they are actually doing all the things. I just want to share a small story of a student, because in 2019 when we were organizing our annual sports day, so there was a boy. So we called him, he got a good personality, but when he was started sweeping he was stammering. So our sports teacher said, ma'am isko main nahi lunga. So I said, okay, because it's your decision, I didn't interfere, but I was just reading the expression of that student. He was so depressed at that particular moment of a time. So I just requested my physical trainer, sir aap isi ko lijiye, because I was not worried about the march fast practice or the command he is going to give. I was only worried about that child. हमने कहा सर यही बच्चा रहेगा, आप कैसे इसको सिखाएंगे ये आप जानिए. And that boy was chosen. And last year in December, sorry, January only, in 2021, we have organized a small farewell ceremony. Now he's going to pass 12th now. So I saw him after an year gap, and the immense confidence that boy has shown. I was seeing him after a span of an year. So I was so happy to see him. Stammering was all gone. He and coincidentally he became the head boy of the school at that time. Sorry, we were planning to that. Okay, I'll make you if you will going to go through this. अगर ये march fast तुमने बढ़िया से कर दी, तो next year I'm going to make you the head boy. This actually incentive I have given to him. So practice करना और तुम्हारी आवाज अच्छे से निकलनी चाहिए. महीना है तुम्हारे पास. उसके बाद things gone. हमारा हो गया, फिर 2020 आया, फिर COVID and all that. Now in 2021 I saw that boy, and he is a changed person now. And so this how matlab it's small. Actually that was a small focus of mine on that child. I don't know, somewhere it must have contributed. I don't know where it had hit him. So this is how we are trying to teach our children, and I'm very much sure my teachers are doing so much of a hard work. They were also following our orders, they are also giving their inputs. So many things are going, we can't even name, because there are so many multi-dimensional things are going on. which are actually teaching us the resilience points and how to become a resilient. The ma'am has just rightly said it's a bounce back. It's a ability to turn all negative things into positive. It is not that we are going to change the things and the actions. I think resilience means we should focus on upon the things which we can really change, or our control, where we can control. Where we cannot control, because covid पे हमारा control नहीं है, but the resources we are having in our hands, उस पे हमारा control है. So this is how we are going to teach our student to just explore the things. Just imagine what happened 100 years before when pandemic was there, how they have survived. So I think we should survive and we should come out of this very beautifully, fantastically. And I think after 7, 8 months or maybe so, I wish it is going to end soon. But whenever it is going to end, we all can proudly say that we have survived fantastically. And that is the meaning of actually being resilient, according to me.
Wonderful, ma'am. In fact, I think it was Winston Churchill who said you should never let a disaster go waste.
Yes.
This pandemic has kind of springboarded our journey in digital education. As you said, 10 years. I remember as a kid, there was a program on Doordarshan where two elderly gentlemen would sit at a desk and would be teaching science. That was the birth of EdTech in India back in the 1980s. Today, that has become reality where people are glued to their computer screens learning the same thing. Right? That's been the journey that we've had to traverse. I'll come to you next, Veena ma'am. Ma'am, Geeta ma'am just spoke about some great example of positive reinforcement, and you have a master's in psychology. So not only am I going to ask you how do you teach resilience, but I will take it a step further. Ma'am, in your psychologist and guidance counselor's role, how do you see resilience as a part of a student's life cycle in the school?
Right. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Sure. So first of all, good evening, everyone. And thank you, the entire team of Notebook, for making me a part of this particular panel discussion. And the topic that you have taken, really the most important one and the relevant one during this pandemic time. And all our esteemed panelists have already spoken about the meaning of resilience. And in a simple term, we can say that, yeah, it's just like a spring. Like if you stretch it, it comes back to the normal shape. So whatever the tension you are giving, whatever the stress you are giving, how it comes back to the normal. So that is something which we need to teach our students. So in a simple term, if you look at the academic part of it, the academics, normally we give them the worksheets, we give them the practice and all those things. But when we talk about the resilience, it is not something where you can give the practice on something. So it is something new that you have to prepare them to face that, and without losing their mental balance, emotional balance, they have to overcome this. So that really becomes a challenge. So, and it's not only the pandemic situation. Right now, we are talking only because we are going through a really tough situation. And we are actually seeing how our students have managed themselves. Like one thing I always feel like, I always talk to my teachers also, being adults, we all are actually worried about the financial security, the social security, and all those kind of things. And very conveniently, we forget what is going through our students' mind or our children's mind. That age is taken for granted. And we all know that students or children at the school age, they are actually the bundles of energy and they have to just vent it out. And we are just locking them inside, saying that, first of all, there is no vaccination for them. And if you are going, you are bringing the virus inside, and all the elderly people at home, they are going to get contracted with the virus. So a lot of restrictions, and we are just stopping them. And this is only one common example that we are actually lively seeing it. But not only that, along with that, we have been hearing a lot of examples like bullying, peer pressure. A lot of other things are also there where students go through a lot of mental stress, physical stress. Like sometimes I've seen like some children on their physical appearance, they have been bullied. So they don't know how to cope up with that. There are some students who are going through a lot of health issues. So in such cases, I feel that resilience, teaching resilience, need to be a part of the regular academics. So, and the restriction that we have is like you cannot give any kind of practice on it. So now that becomes challenging for us. Like, how do you teach? So there is a particular, a famous child psychologist, and Dr. Ginsburg. So he has actually told that there are 7 integral parts which actually brings the resilience in any human being. So if you take like competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, and how do you cope and control your emotions. So whatever activities we do, so irrespective of scholastic or co-scholastic activities that you are doing in a school, if we revolve around these 7 integral parts, I'm sure that in a way we are actually giving them a practice on how do you control your emotions, how do you manage your emotions, how do you handle the situation without getting panic. So that becomes really important in bringing those qualities in children. So it can be like, normally we say that teachers are the major teachers are actually playing a major role in any student's life. We know that the parents are there and they are taking care of their all other needs, but the kind of emotional connect that happens with the student and a teacher, that is something which nobody can take it. Even right now we know that the technology is there, and there are many videos that are available, and you feel that the knowledge is available through Google. You search any kind of knowledge, you get that. But the kind of human connection that happens between a teacher and a student, that is actually very, very precious. So the first and foremost thing, being an educator, I would say that it's the first thing that we need to do is that connect to your students, make a rapport with those students and understand their strength and weakness. And as we always say that, always appreciate them in public, and any criticism, do it in private. So what happens is that we actually bring their confidence level up, boost their self-esteem, and child themselves, they feel that like, yes, I can do it. So bringing that kind of confidence in a child's mind, that is very, very important. And any kind of situation they come across, they will know that, yes, this is something which I can actually work it out. I can come out of it. So then they start thinking about, okay, what are the solutions? But otherwise, what happens if the child's emotional and mental strength itself is not there? Then definitely they will get panic, they will lose the control, they will not be able to face any situation, and they will always go for finding somebody whom they can blame or they can depend upon. So all those things will happen. So definitely that will not serve the purpose. So I would say like that will be the first and foremost thing that any teacher or any educator should be doing it. And normally we say that in a school, we all have school diaries. And in a school diary, we either we use it for sending the homework, or any complaints are there, we normally write it. But how often we do that, any good thing the child has done, we appreciate that and write it in the diary. So that parent is also aware of it. So making that connection, because taking parents along with us and making sure that we are providing a good environment where the child feels confident, secure, that is very, very important. So through that, if we are able to bring the self-esteem of a child, definitely resilience will be a part of it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Regarding that point of videos being there, that was one of the first things that we realized when we were making videos at Notebook. We said that the one place where we'll completely and utterly fail is the personal connect that the teacher has. So the best we can do is enable and empower the teacher the best we can. We are a teaching aid. The idea is to support the teachers, because the kind of personal rapport that you have with the students, that is so much more important than whatever scholastic content we can funnel through a video. That's much more holistic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Kaushal, I'll come back to you.
Mr. Roy, I would like to, in fact, I would just like to add on one thing over here. You just mentioned about the making it into an aid, and because I think I would just say one statement: no technology or no gadget can replace the teacher, I think, because Google is always there. Now kids, this generation is actually born with technology at their fingertips. They can Google it, everything is just a click away. But when it comes down to the role of a teacher, the connect they get from a teacher, I think that is irreplaceable. Nobody can replace that warmth, that connection. And that I think is very much required when we talk about the holistic development of every single child. I think what a teacher can do in the life of a student, nobody else can do that.
Absolutely, ma'am. Could not agree more. Dr. Kaushal,
may I also say something on this?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Both
please.
of them were Absolutely correct, because the interaction we used to have, now we're having online interaction. So what I've actually, nowadays lockdown, the classes are suspended nowadays. The homework I've given to my teachers, just a day, just call two students, don't talk to parents, no need to talk to parents, just hello, I want to talk to a child, how my child is doing, how the holiday homework they are doing, any problem you are facing, what are you doing in your holidays. So just connect to a student, so they will be thrilled ki, oh, my class teacher called me today, oh, my subject teacher called me today. At least they have a reason to be joyous, because they are actually sitting under the four walls, we are cribbing, we are actually accusing everybody, we adults have the capacity and we are so much vocal about all our feelings, but kids are not. They can't express themselves very much, they are not so vocal. And unfortunately, in India, what I feel, ki we don't teach them anywhere, neither in our schools, neither in our places, neither now we have a single family. That is the problem in our families now. Earlier they were joint families, they learned patience, they know how to deal with the things on their own. Kabhi chacha paas chale gaye, kabhi dada paas chale gaye, dadi paas chale gaye, but now they have nobody. This is really unfortunate, and they are not, and we are not. As a school, we can be a contributors, we should actually motivate them to speak, and then to speak positively what they are feeling inside. They should talk about it, whatever they want to. I'm not saying that only we are talking about the education or some activities or something. Just talk to them. That's what we are also trying to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In fact, what you've given me is the perfect segue for my next question, because I was going to ask Dr. Kaushal. Ma'am, you spoke about the parents bit a little earlier. Geeta ma'am just spoke about it. But the reality often is that the student writes an exam, did not score great marks, goes home. The parents are absolutely reactive to it, right? And we are teaching a student delayed gratification, take a pause, etc. How do you then balance this? Do you teach parents how to be more resilient? Do you teach them to be a little more patient?
Wonderful question, Mr. Roy. Thank you for the question, I would say. See, that's why I was talking in the beginning also that the collaboration needs to be very, very important. If we're talking about training our kids being resilient or teaching resilience, I think obviously parents need to understand that what we exactly trying to do, because obviously that is the tendency of the parent, of any parent. Because I think very often we observe during our online classes as well, especially for the junior ones, if I'll say, because the parents are sitting adjacent to them, and if the child is not able to even give the reply, the correct reply, immediate prompting is going to be there from the parent side. Okay, you have to say like, so you are actually killing the creativity of the child, first of all. Second, you're not giving the chance and the platform to the child where the child is going to learn and accept that failure, or is going to learn that how I have to cope up with this thing, or how I have to grasp this thing. This is, my learning environment, how I have to deal with this. So parents is always there. Being a support system is totally different, but killing that creativity and killing that platform and that opportunities, again, parents are not realizing that what actually they are doing it. Maybe obviously they are doing it unintentionally. So I think over here, to educate parents again is also going to be very, very important. And I think to some extent technology has helped us, because nowadays we are connecting with the parents through online, and every class parents are also equally there with the child. So we can clearly convey our message to the parents, and parents are also now, I have seen that change is there, because initially it was a big challenge for us. Every time teacher used to connect with the class and with the students, half of the time it used to be parents who used to keep on prompting and keep on giving the replies. But now I think we have seen over a year now, the situation is little stable, and I will say under control, because we have made the parents understand that no, this is not that we are judging the child. No comparison is going to take place, because towards the end it is all about resilience, it is about life skills. The child is not going to complete grade 1 or grade 2 and the promotion which is going to be the end result or the learning goal. We need to focus at what exactly we are going to teach our children. So I think over here, um, I think all the viewers, if they are going to understand this, this message is for all the viewers and all the parents, that let's be together when we talk about the holistic development of our kids. Let's not, I would say, let's not hinder that, and let's not question that. If your child is not able to score well, because it's not about scoring or out that scorecard. I would just like to quote an example over here. Last year, not last year, I think during this lockdown period only, one girl, she scored wonderful last year and she was the topper, I would say. And a few marks got deducted in her chemistry subject. She was so badly, I would say, emotionally breakdown. She totally was under depression, and the mother came to my office almost in tears, and she broke down in front of me, telling me, "Ma'am, isne itna ganda score kabhi nahi aaya hai." Just see the statement of the mother. She was comparing her performance of her own child with her performance only, and she was saying, "Ma'am, I cannot believe that this is my child." I said, "Ma'am, so what? Doesn't matter. हो सकता है आ गया हो, आप इतना क्यों पैनिक कर रहे हैं? आप इतना पैनिक कर रहे हैं, you are simply transferring this panic to the child. That's why the child is under so much of stress." And there again, what we are actually doing, we are not teaching our children how to face real life challenges. एक बार अगर failure आ गया, तो are we going to question the child, or are we start going to compare the child, so that child में इतना low self esteem हो जाए, so that the child should not be able to adapt the present situation? I talked to the child over a call. I made her understand, beta, this is just a scorecard. This is not what exactly you have to focus upon. And you won't believe, we had a long chit chat, obviously, but then I motivated her and I made her understand that what exactly you have to learn, what exactly should be your learning goals. It's not about getting 99% out of 100 or just scoring 100 out of 100 should be your learning goal. That is what is not our focus, and that should not be your focus as well. And the parent thanked me later on that, "Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, we totally understand. But sometimes, maybe that rat race is there of joining that, 100% rat race of, joining that crowd where everybody's getting A grade. My child should also get the A grade." Because as a parent also, I think as an educator, obviously, we'll be having different statements, but we all are parents as well. Intentionally, unintentionally, we also do the same to some extent. When we have to see the performance of our own child, unintentionally only, every time, "Beta, you did not get A plus, but your friend got A plus." That comparison itself is going to kill that power of resilience, that magic of, I would say, your positivity is going to be killed there only. The child is going to develop that fear that, "Oh my God, what next if I won't be able to get that score? My mother is going to get that disappointment. I will be giving that, uh, that kind of feeling to my parents or to my teachers." So I think it is very, very important, being educators and being parents, that we understand our responsibility and roles. This is very important, because alone teachers won't be able to do it. And if I talk about that total responsibilities on parents, that is also not true. It has to be done together. We need to be on the same page. We need to understand that what exactly education really means. Does this really means, passing board exams and getting admission in one of the universities, or we really need to prepare our kids for the universe and have all those real life skills, so that they should be able to cope up with every single challenge they are going to face in their lives? I think that should be the um, learning objective. That should be the learning objective when we are teaching our children.
Wonderful thoughts, ma'am. Geeta, if I may come to you next. Given the semi-rural setup that you experience, excuse me, do you have the same experience with your parents?
Sure. Very many times the parents are coming, especially they don't want activities in school. Earlier it was there, now they have no choice actually. Earlier it was there कि मैम एक्टिविटीज मत कराइए, बस पढ़ाई कराइए, हम लोग एक्टिविटीज का पैसा नहीं देते, आपको पढ़ाने का पैसा देते हैं. तो there are so many times we have to convince them कि सर आपके बच्चे को कम्युनिकेशन स्किल भी आना चाहिए, बच्चा बोलेगा नहीं, उसके अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस कैसे आएगा. देन आई अटैक विद वन क्वेश्चन कि सर आप अपने बच्चे के साथ कितना टाइम स्पेंड करते हो. आई रियली आस्क देम, and there is my winning point. They don't have a word कि मैम मैं तो चला जाता हूँ, only mothers are there, and they're also complaining, मुझे नहीं पता वो क्या करता है क्या नहीं करता. Then I tell them कि sir copy खोल के देखिए आपका बच्चा क्या कर रहा है. If he's scoring, and this is actually system is like that. It's a convention ki we are actually all the time emphasizing on the marks, and there is the roles of the teachers also comes ki marks is not everything. Learning is important, and how much you are actually creating the curiosity in a child, that is important. ये काउंसलिंग हमें बच्चों की भी करनी है, पेरेंट्स की स्पेशली करनी है, बच्चों से ज्यादा पेरेंट्स की करनी है, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स पेरेंट्स आर देयर, वेदर इट्स अ ग्रैंडमदर और अ मदर. भाई पापा यहाँ भैया क्या पढ़ाई हुई, ओके फाइन, मतलब दे डोंट इवन गिव अ डैम टाइम. माओ के पास भी टाइम नहीं होता, स्पेशली वी से दैट वेदर इट्स अ रूरल एरिया और अर्बन एरिया. नाउ द कंसेप्ट इज एवरीबडी इज बिजी in some or other thing. They really don't that kind of a time. We used to remember when we were kid how much time our mother and father were giving to us, and that was really a quality things. We were actually far better. We are not insecure, we don't have that shallow kind of attitudes. We sometimes I used to compare ki what kind of upbringing we had and what kind of upbringing they are actually having right now. Parents are actually I'm sorry, I don't want to sound, actually didn't mean to be offensive, but they are not bothered ki what they are learning in school. I just in orientation meeting I used to tell them कि sir activities make your child a multi-dimensional child, क्योंकि बच्चे को घर से बाहर निकलना है. वो किताबों में क्या लिख रहा है क्या नहीं लिख रहा है hardly matters at a point of time when they will go and face the world. उसको बोलना आना चाहिए, उसको प्रेजेंटेबल होना चाहिए, उसको स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन होना चाहिए, बिकॉज नाउ थिंग्स हैव चेंज्ड, सिनेरियो हैज बीन चेंज्ड. वी हैव मतलब a line of sports person who are so successful throughout the world. So these kind of things we have to explain it to them. So very many examples, I have a list of examples I can give you, and somehow now they are gradually accepting the role of activities. Because sometimes I used to tell them भैया CBSE का curriculum है, मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकती, sorry मुझे करना है. तो somehow I make them understand like this कि this is a part of a curriculum, I can't help it, so please sir cooperate with us. So somehow they also give up, whether they are convinced or not, they have to give up. So these are the things which actually we keep on balancing the things. And there comes the role of a teacher. Fantastic role of a teachers are there, because actually we are only facing a single parent or individual parent or individual child, but they are facing actually a crowd of parents, a crowd of children, and they are doing fantastic jobs in that.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you so much. Veena, ma'am, if I can come to you, but with the other end of the spectrum, right? Helicopter parents. How do helicopter parents affect the build-up of resilience in a child?
True. First of all, I'll just tell you, like, no, normally in my school, whenever we have a staff meeting, my teachers usually complain, ma'am, it's very easy to handle students, but how to handle parents? This used to be a common complaint. But my answer used to be like, that's why they are parents and you are teachers, right? So the first thing I'll tell you, these kind of scenario, like how parents are worried about their children and their future. So I don't blame parents exactly, because first of all, whether it's a reaction or an overreaction, it's only because of their anxiety, because they are ignorant and they are confused about their parenting. And they feel that whether I am a good parent or not. So that confusion itself, it actually brings a lot of like reactions on their part. We know that we are living in a society where always a comparison happens with the marks. Somehow the conventional method of education itself is, yeah, my friend's son got 98.9 or 99.9. So that point is also mattered. So always there is a pressure on the parents from the society as well as from the parent background also. Most of the times I have come across parents where the entire family has been into the engineering stream or a doctor, and whether the child is interested in arts or anything like that, no, that is only for the hobby. You just pick up either the engineering or a doctor's, so MBBS. So these kind of situations happen, and that actually leads to these kind of problems where it becomes difficult to handle parents rather than students. But one more example I would like to tell you, because these are the scenarios that we have been talking about, the common problems that every school might be facing. Especially, I have come across some issues where students were facing some kind of learning difficulty. So that becomes really a challenge for us as an educator or as a teacher to convince parents that, first of all, make them understand, see, your child is going through a tough situation. They are not able to understand the way. And probably all teachers, I cannot expect they need to know about what is the kind of difficulty the child is facing, because we have experts for it, like special educators, or there are some institutions, they do this kind of testing. So it takes a lot of time for me to actually meet those parents and convince them, please take your child to undergo a particular test and let us know what kind of difficulty the child is facing. And once we are aware about what kind of situation it is, it becomes easy for us to teach the child accordingly. So it could be like the child is actually interested in science, maths, but the child is not able to understand the way teacher is teaching. So definitely teacher needs to change the way of teaching. So, and that is possible only once she is actually told about what is the kind of difficulty the child is facing. So such situations, yes, it has been really a tough time for us. And I had cases where after these kind of interactions, I was able to convince a few parents, and those children, after that, they were going through these remedial measures, whatever the special educator had devised, and they started scoring marks. And again, we are coming back to the marks. The child started scoring marks, and parent was really happy. And then they came and told, yes, ma'am, you were right. So somewhere, we have to, that's what I told you, like, parents are actually confused. So somewhere we need to understand, being an educator, being a teacher, and we need to understand what is their worry, and we will handle our students accordingly, and we will make them happy. No issues. And that is what, one more thing I was telling you, like if you consider the education as a triangle, and the three corners, like one is teacher, one parents, and one is for students, and all three corners are equally important. Without one, we cannot make that triangle. So similarly, a teacher needs to make a conscious effort to make sure that they are making the parents aware about the strength, weakness of every student, so that they are also not shocked by seeing whatever the changes they are seeing. They are also equally becoming a part in the journey what the child is going through it. And this definitely will help them to provide an opportunity or an environment where child can actually practice whatever they are good at, and we will not be criticizing them for something that they are not good at. So again, coming back to the resilience, how we teach resilience, make them more confident. For that, we have to give them the opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ma'am. My last question, and this is to do with technology. Students today, we like it or not, are exposed to a ton of social media, right? Perhaps a lot more than we would be comfortable with. And that considers, from the resilience point of view, has two extremes, right? On one side, there are so many, quotes and images saying that be resilient, stand in the face of adversity. Instagram is full of quotes, right? On the other side, you have reaction videos. People on YouTube have spawned a whole segment of videos called reaction videos, where people are looking at things and reacting in weird ways. Right? To a young learner, to the young audience of such content, this tends to get very exhausting. It's confusing to say the least. Dr. Kaushal, if I may again come to you first, ma'am, how do you ask students to navigate the online space when it comes to building up of resilience?
Well, Mr. Roy very well said that when you mentioned about technology, that, and you gave the example that actually it has got extremities. Either if you go towards the one end, you'll see a lot of images and quotes about being resilient and strength of resilient and everything. And another side, you'll see the reaction. I think, again, a very important part which I feel being an educator, we have to play is that we need to teach our students when to react and when to respond. There's a big difference between a reaction and a response. So once we are going to deal and we are going to teach and train the minds of our students, then I think we need not to face these extremities, because then they will know that when to react and when to give our reaction and when to respond. Obviously, the young learners, because that curiosity is there, and everything, whatever they are seeing nowadays, they are getting that fascination and they are getting that temptation is there to try and to experience that. Obviously, again, coming back to resilience, this is something which we are not going to teach them as a subject. But yes, in every subject, with the help of every subject, we are going to teach them the power of being resilient and what it actually means when we talk about the resilience. So I think technology is something where we need to train our kids that how to make best use out of it, and not to react and respond when it is not required, and to look for the authentication of every single thing. Again, we can give them a small example also, whether you want to be a small seedling or a tree, because you need to have your deep roots so that you can actually bear that storm and that sun, because there has to be a balance. If you really want to survive and thrive under hard and tough times, you need to have that strength. So I think it is very, very important to train and just train the mindsets of a young learners, because if we'll just go by the statements and we just again start teaching them on controlling them, again there's a way, because this is young generation. They will actually do what they're going to experience, and I think they'll do that more which we are going to tell them not to do. Right. I think being an educator, every teacher is going to agree with that, because whenever you are going to tell them that we should not do these things, the tendency is going to be there more to do, try that out and feel that and experience that, okay, mama has told me not to do this, or my teacher has told not to do this. Let me see that how it is going to come out. So technology is again playing a vital role nowadays, because everything is taking place with the help of this. I would say this has totally got converted into digital era. So it is very, very important that we train the mindsets of our young learners, that they should not just follow and start reacting and giving responses. Whatever is coming to their way, then they need to look for that authentication. And I think it is again going to be the responsibility of, again coming back to my teachers and parents, that they give that space where they should go and express themselves, because they need to know that no reaction or no emotion is wrong. Whatever they're experiencing or whatever they are facing, everything is correct. Once we will give them that confidence that whatever you are experiencing, whatever kind of emotion you are having, it is absolutely correct, and then we can guide them accordingly. I think that would serve the purpose, and that would really help technology to play its role and not to take it into a negative way. That's all I think I have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Geeta, ma'am, if I may come to you next. Ma'am, you said your students are more comfortable with games than with the studying online bit. So I'm
This
guessing you
is
have more of this
actually,
problem.
this is actually a universal scene actually, because the parents used to complain us when we take the feedback of the parents, ki why you are not actually, why your child is not taking online class. So the feedback we come to know कि वो mobile game खेलने लग जाता है, तो we don't actually leave them alone with the mobiles and all. So because actually the problem is in rural area, because this concept is actually new. That's what I've told you. We are 10 years ahead now. अगर ये पेंडेमिक नहीं आता तो आई डोंट थिंक सो कि जो मेरे 20% का ग्राफ है ये कभी 60% तक आने वाले 5 सालों में भी जाता. तो things are changing, but there is a equal responsibility of a parent and the teacher to tell them how to create a balance. The one thing is there कि whatever teacher is the way they are counseling our students, I think parents should give the backup to that. This is actually should be there, which is actually not happening. ये हमारे टाइम में होता था, इफ आई कैन से कंपेयर, कि हमारे पेरेंट्स चुपचाप हमारी टीचर की बात मानते थे, हम गलत होते या नहीं होते थे तो हमें 2-4 पड़ जाती थी अगर टीचर की कंप्लेन आ जाती थी. नाउ द सिनेरियो इज कि अगर बच्चे ने कंप्लेन कर दी टीचर की, तो गॉड सेव द टीचर इन द स्कूल. तो सिनेरियो चेंज हो जाता है. तो यहाँ पे अभी क्वेश्चन था, मैं पैनल में देख रही थी, somebody has asked, is the responsibility of a teacher and a parent is equal? Definitely is equal. Because if you're not getting the backup of a parent alone, what a teacher can do in a 40-minute class. So likewise, with the pandemic, we have actually suffering from infodemic also. Lot of information is there, and according to our data and all that, things are going on. 60% information we are getting from Google and all is all fake. So this is how and how we are going to counsel our students ki you have to understand ki where you have to say no, or you just keep, because obviously whatever homework they are getting, whatever video lessons they are taking, whatever activities, so everything is online right now, we can't escape. तो फ्यूचर व्हाट वी वर थिंकिंग यस्टरडे इज नाउ, आज से शायद हम 4 साल पहले सोच रहे थे कि ये होने वाला है आने वाले 20 सालों में, वो एक्चुअली 4 साल के अंदर हो चुका है। एवरीबडी, मोबाइल सबके हाथ में आ चुका है, टेक्नोलॉजी सेवी सब हो चुके हैं, तो टेक सेवी वाज एक्चुअली द डिमांड ऑफ द फ्यूचर, बट नाउ students are becoming tech savvy, parents are becoming tech savvy, but how appropriate this medium should be encashed, we have to counsel them. And that is, I think, the role of school is very important. Teachers are very important to tell them where you have to stop. गेम्स भी खेलेंगे, हमें पता है उसका कुछ नहीं कर सकते, हम जितनी मर्जी काउंसलिंग कर ले, वो अपना टाइम निकालेंगे। तो मी टाइम निकालिए, क्योंकि आजकल मी टाइम कोई है ही नहीं, बाहर बच्चा खेलने जा नहीं सकता, वो क्या करेगा, वो गेम्स तो खेलेगा ही। इट्स ट्रू, लेट्स एक्सेप्ट इट, हम भी बच्चों कहते हैं ओके खेलो, बट यू शुड बी रियलाइजिंग, क्योंकि मोबाइल का यूज एक एडिक्शन है, इट्स लाइक एन एडिक्शन। आप जब तक 2-4 गेम नहीं खेले तो आई एम वेरी मच श्योर वेरी मेनी एडल्ट्स आर आल्सो डूइंग दैट। उनके लिए भी है कि कितनी आप बातें चैटिंग कर लो किसी के साथ, यू ऑल्सो ट्राई टू हैव योर ओन मी टाइम एंड प्लेइंग गेम्स, डू इट, but do it wisely and in a very balancing manner. And there is the role of what I say.
I think
That's
Geeta Ma'am's
what-
connection is, but I think we got most of it. Thank you so much, ma'am. Veena ma'am, coming to you next. This question is your ballpark because you're sitting in the Silicon Valley of India, right? How has been your experience with your children and mobiles and technology?
To start with, when we started our online classes, we did face much issues with respect to the devices or internet connection and all. Like, I would rather say my students were much more ahead than my teachers. And many times they were teaching my teachers. So this was really a good scenario. Yeah, rightly mentioned, it's always like all these days we were stopping them using devices, no internet, no mobile, and like under parental control only you are supposed to watch videos and all those kind of things. Now all of a sudden you have told that okay, the entire day you are going to be sitting in front of the laptop, you have the internet connectivity because you are supposed to attend the classes, right? And we cannot expect every parent to be sitting beside students and watching them what they are going through. I just wanted to tell you one example that we came across. Like here during the PTM, my teachers actually had made a list of students who were not regular to the classes. Like we had continuously classes going on, and they made a list of it, and they wanted to personally tell parents also, like your child is not attending the classes, they are not regular in uploading the assignments and everything. And to our surprise, parent was saying, no, I make sure that morning 8 o'clock he is there in front of the system, and the entire day he is there. And the parent is moving around, he can see that teacher's face and the teacher is teaching. But actually what was happening, the screen has been set as the classroom and the child is actually listening to something else and he is busy with something else. And whenever teacher is asking any question and everything, no, video is not on, audio is not on. In fact, we had one case where teacher was asking a question, the child managed to show as if he is frozen. So the teacher feels that, okay, the network connectivity, so the child is not able to answer it. And unfortunately, his mother walked behind. So somehow we were able to catch him also. So such cases, like, no, they are much more ahead than us. What we think, they are much more ahead than us. So this was a common thing. But what we found was, like, yes, initially we were finding it very difficult to control this, to bring them back to the classes, because now you have given the complete freedom of utilizing the network, internet connectivity, the games, everything is there. And how can you make sure that they are utilizing it properly? So one thing which I was mentioning you, like, the personal connect. Initially, my teachers were actually calling them over the phone. They were trying to connect through the WhatsApp calls and all. And initially, it was actually like they felt, okay, ma'am is calling me. But somehow they were able to make a rapport. And because of that affection towards the teacher, they started attending the classes. So in that way, we were able to get the attendance in the classes. Second, what we found that, as I mentioned, like there were many students who were much ahead than us in the technological area, and we started utilizing that. We had one club which was running on Saturday, which is called Design Thinking. And in that, we had a set of students who were really good at technology. And they, out of their interest, they started learning it. And they were making a lot of games. They were creating a lot of YouTube videos, all those kind of things. And what we did was like my computer department teacher and a set of other teachers, they utilized these student skills, and we created an examination platform using their skills, which is more like an adaptive assessment, where the child attempts one question, and the way how they answer, whether it is the right answer or wrong answer, it moves to the next difficulty level. Then anywhere they get stuck, they come back to the previous one. And you won't believe the whole journey started in such a way where we asked them, if you are writing an exam online, what are the kind of things that you will be doing for cheating? And they gave us the list of things. And from there, we told, okay, you gave us the solution. How can we remove it? So utilizing their skills, we converted it into something which we are able to use it today for our exams. So I think, somewhere that personal connect that you can make, again, technology cannot replace teachers. Teachers are the best resources that we have. And the way how they connect to students, the way how they understand their strength, weakness, and the way how they convert it into more useful way of utilizing their skills. So that is something which we need to focus.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would have loved to continue with this discussion.
I would like to thank Veena, ma'am. I just got a wonderful tip from her. We are also going to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, this has been fantastic. I wish we could continue for the entire evening, but because of paucity of time, we'll have to call it to a close. I will now invite Achin to do the formal vote of thanks. But for me personally, it's been absolutely thrilling to play host to all of you. Wonderful, wonderful thoughts. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Achin, over to you for the vote of thanks.
I think really wonderful session, must appreciate. And very thought-provoking as well. Bharat sir, thank you as always for giving us a great start. And indeed some very relevant examples, very touching examples. Indeed, we are grateful to you. Great start, sir. Geeta ma'am, I think,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think, ma'am, you made some very, very important points, which really stays with us and stays with our esteemed audience as well. I think building this personal connect when teachers were directly calling up students and how that helped eventually, students' attendance improving, they're taking more interest, etc., is really wonderful. Also, another thing that you pointed out, I completely agree with you that in today's nuclear family setup, when social support is far less than what it used to be, definitely, there's no doubt about it that esteemed educators or teachers have a much larger role to play. Because, if you look at things from a child's perspective, it's a very small circle. So parents, and very often working parents, both of them, So naturally, a child's share in terms of attention definitely has reduced a lot. If you look at things, how things were when we were growing up in our school days and vis-a-vis what we are seeing now, and also smaller families. So I think two very relevant points. And also, I think another thing that you highlighted very, very, very beautifully, you articulated the need to convince parents in terms of activities and need to take them along in the journey. I think that is really important.
Thank you so much.
I think
sir.
what wonderful points. I must appreciate.
Thank you so much.
Veena ma'am, I'm really very happy to know about your design thinking club and how actually children contributed to making this adaptive assessment platform, exam platform, really wonderful to be able to utilize their skills. We always, this really helps. Doing something hands-on, learning is immense, no doubt about it. And also what we were discussing again and again, it really gives them confidence. Confidence which is far beyond mere words, doing something and then actually, using it for themselves. Really great. I think some very other important points you made, including, I think, the need to reach out to parents, for example, appreciating a child in the school diary, being able to build bridges, and being able to ensure that the child indeed feels that his or her effort is being recognized, appreciated. Again, leading to that magic word of confidence, which ultimately helps in building resilience, undoubtedly. And also, I think you very well summed it up that parents, their anxiety at times it's very natural, reaction to various issues. And naturally, at times there's also a burden of guilt, not being able to give adequate time to your child, especially say, for example, returning home late from work, etc. And then the natural fallout is at times not being able to understand what's happening around. And I think last, on a lighter side, really, of course, none of us would kind of adhere to it. But the creativity of the child who was trying to act frozen is indeed, when we discuss about creativity, it indeed, and on that note, I think some very good points made by you, Dr. Kaushal. Again, we were discussing about creativity, and I think you started off very beautifully by mentioning the fact that we should never ever kill creativity. That's very important, to give them confidence, to not take away their share of time in the podium. Whether they're being able to perform or not is a secondary issue, but letting them speak for themselves, whether right or wrong, and not taking that creativity away. I completely agree with you. It's a very, very important point, no doubt about it. Another, I think, very good point you mentioned, ma'am. I must appreciate that. What is the ultimate learning goal? I think this is very, very important. What is the learning goal, and what is it that we are trying to prepare them for? Is it for the university or the universe? I think this really stays with us. Very well summed up. Must appreciate. Very, very well summed up. I think some other great points also you mentioned, and especially being able to teach our students when to react and when to respond. I think that is another very important point. Very, very important point. So, and the fact that roots need to be deep enough. I think this is the essence of the evening. When we are discussing about resilience, I think this really captures everything very beautifully, very aptly. The fact is that our children do need to have deep roots, whether that be in terms of values, in terms of conviction, in terms of courage, in terms of self-confidence, which will really help them to survive under any circumstances, and not only survive, but also thrive and make all of us proud. I think really wonderful session we had. I also thank members of our esteemed audience for their time today. It has been really wonderful. I thank all of you again. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.